Mr. Wendell just come down and said he designed it, but. It's possible, but.
That shirt's cool.
Don't
We should have
tell him,
kept.
But I sorta.
We should have kept Jefferson's colors.
Don't believe.
We should have kept some of them colors. Where'd you go?
I just didn't. It's very possible. He might have. I don't know. I shouldn't add something, but.
Did you go to Monroe?
He spends too much time with Mr. Cheney, and I don't usually believe a whole lot of.
I believe everything.
Do you have any crypto?
Gotta invest in that Litecoin, man. I like coin.
I figure if the world does crash, I'm gonna be one of the first ones.
Yeah, I literally don't see anything that's worth it.
Like 250 pounds.
Like,
I'll be one of the first ones that somebody shoots and eats.
Not the Jesus sandals.
I weigh a lot. Oh, look, that one, that's a big one. All right, frequency distributions. We started this last time. We're going to run through the first part pretty quick. We'll probably do a worksheet while we're in here. Again, a frequency distribution. We're going to do grouped most of the time. Grouped most of the time, that's what we're going to do. Ungrouped sometimes, just if the numbers are, if you only have certain numbers like 1 through 5 or something like that, then we'll do ungrouped. But grouped most of the time. So this is what an ungrouped looks like, 1 through, where you just have these numbers. The grouped, I talked last time about the quiz. We'll take the quiz next class over this stuff. We'll try to do a couple of them today first. That's a grouped. The hardest part is finding the classes. And we talked about that last time. We'll talk about it again today. That's what a frequency distribution chart looks like, except ours, we're going to do this with them. We're going to add a whole bunch of stuff all the way out through there, and it's going to be, it didn't write out there, Sean. Took you a second, didn't it? So we're going to add a whole bunch of stuff to it. And we'll talk about what those other sections are. I still think we probably ought to just do all this stuff longhand and not use the calculators. That's what other schools do. I should probably go back to that. F stands for frequency. Your lower class limits here, we're going to find those first. Upper class limits, and again, we'll go over some of this as we do it. And then the frequency, of course, is the other thing. Your class width, please remember with your class width, don't subtract these two numbers. You're subtracting any consecutive lower class limits. So it could be these two. What's 26 minus 21?
5.
And the reason for that, if we count up the numbers that are in each class, 6 to 10. So you got the number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 10. There's 5 numbers in there. That's your class width. All of these have to be the same. So when you get down here to this bottom one, we talked a little bit about this last time, when you get down to this bottom one, that class width has to be the same as every other one. Just because your highest number is 28, you can't cut this off at 28, because then it skews everything. It makes it so it's different. Anybody know what skewed means? Like makes it go different than it should be. We're going to talk about that a lot as we go throughout the year also. We just talked about all those. Class midpoints, find your class midpoint. Add to the lower limit and the upper limit, divide by 2. That's not hard. You just find the average of the lower limit and the upper limit. That's going to be what's right in the middle. So what was that, 6 and 10 that we just got done doing? Add 6 plus 10, that's 16. Divide by 2, you get 8. That's your class midpoint. Nothing really hard about that. The class boundaries. This is on the notes later on. I think that's about where we stopped, and we'll get to that. All you're doing to find the class boundaries, you take a half. You subtract a half from the low side, add a half to the high side, and that gives you your class boundaries. And all that does is when we're on the number line, for on this number line, we're instead of skipping things, like just having ones and twos, we're trying to make sure that we include everything, even the stuff in the middle. So it'd be, our class boundary for two would be 1.5 all the way to 2.5. So it's just telling you the boundaries of that certain class area. That symbol means summation. I think I made fun of Sean because he made a funny summation last time. He thought it was great. Summation just means you're adding everything up. Add all up. And I think I mentioned last time that we will have some quizzes and tests coming up, but they won't really be tests, be quizzes over symbols and graphs and all that stuff. It'll just say, what's this symbol mean? You'll have to tell me what it means. This is probably the most important thing, finding that class width. Find the range. The range is just the highest minus the lowest, divided by how many classes. They will tell you how many classes every time. Usually it's 4, 5, 6, or 7. We usually stay in that little range right there, 4, 5, 6, or 7. We usually don't go much more than that. When you find your class width, no matter what it comes out to be, if it comes out to be 4.02, we still round it up. That goes up to 5 every time you round up. Not for everything that we do in the class, but for class width, you always round up. Find your class limits. We'll talk more about that. Find the remaining lower limits. We'll talk about that as we do some problems. Find the upper limit of the first class. Then you just they can't overlap, so, and we did this a little bit last time, we'll talk more about it. Find the remaining upper class limits. Let's go back for a second. Remember the very last upper class limit, you just have to take the last number that you put in for the upper class limit and add the class width to it. There's no other way to do it. We'll talk about that as we get to it. Make your tallies. I usually put in mine, when I make my frequency distribution, I got my classes, and I always put a column for the tally marks and then the frequency. If you don't want to put the tallies in there, you don't have to. The book will do it some of the times that they won't. Count the tally marks up. That's the hardest part. Riley will have a whole lot of trouble with counting your tally marks, right, Riley? Yeah. You have trouble counting. You might have to take off your shoes every now and then. We did this one together last time because I messed it up and thought it wasn't done on here right, and we went through all that. What made it? Let's go back to this. One thing I did do, what made it a little easier with what we did last time? Put it in order. If it's in order, it's a little easier. Doesn't have to be, because you could make your frequency distribution, find your classes, and then do your tallies here. And once you find your classes and put them in, you could go, okay, and we'll do this throughout the year. 90 is in this class, 130 is in this class, 400 is in this class, and you could tally them as you go. The only bad thing with doing it that way is you may get lost, and you'll probably notice in some of your books, when you see something like this, you'll see some of the numbers might be hard to read because somebody who had the book previously was going through and doing that and marking out the numbers as they went. So number of classes, 7, that was given to us. Just to find the class width, we took the highest number and the lowest number. Anybody remember what was the highest? Wasn't it 450 or something?
Yeah.
What was the lowest?
50.
Somebody help me out. It was 450 minus 59. And then we divided by 7, what's 391 divided by 7? 55.8 something, so what are we gonna round that up to? 56, that's our class width. That's probably the hardest thing out of all this, is making sure you get that class width correct. So 56, then once we have that, gonna put your lowest number in your list, that's just the lowest number in the list. That's always gonna start you, and then you're just gonna add 56 all the way down for the lower limits to get each one of the next. So you find all of the lower limits first. Then we're gonna find the upper limits, and the way we find the upper limits is just by looking at this lower limit right here. If that's 115, then that means this one goes to 114. If this is 171, that one's gotta be 170. And we go all the way down till we get down here, this one, for the last one down here, you'll have to add 56 to it, because there's nothing to look at to see what you're supposed to go up to. And we end up with that. So that's our frequency, or that's part of our frequency distribution with the lower limits and the upper limits. We did that already. And find the remaining by adding 56. Then we could go through and do all the tally marks, count them up. We got our frequency out here for each one. When you get done with the frequency, please make sure, this is where that summation comes in, make sure you add all these up. 13, 19, 24, 27, 30. And make sure that you got the same number as the number that you had in your sample. That's what your frequency distribution looks like. Again, we're gonna add other things out here. Some of the things we're gonna add a midpoint, we're gonna add boundaries, we're gonna add cumulative frequency, so on and so on. We're just gonna keep adding stuff to it. Summation, we already did that. Midpoint of a class, tell me when we get to about where we left off last time, all right? Midpoint, all you're gonna do, add these two numbers, divide by 2, and it's gonna tell you the midpoint. And what we're gonna use that midpoint for again, is we're gonna make graphs. And when we make the graphs, instead of going like 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 140, putting all those on there, we're just going to put the midpoint so that we can make our bars for each one. This over here is gonna be our frequency. How many times it occurred? This one occurred 5, so we go up to 5 there, and we're just gonna make the bars up that much. Next one would go up to 8, and so on and so on. But we put the midpoints on here right in the middle of the bar, so it makes it easier to draw the graphs. Once you find the first midpoint, you don't really have to do the adding and dividing by 2 every time. You could just add 56 to class width. Sometimes it's easier to add them and divide by 2 than it is to add 56. I can't add 56 in my head probably, so I would probably just grab my calculator and add those 2 and divide by 2. Relative frequency. Relative frequency is, instead of a decimal, we said you're probably gonna change it to a what? So this is gonna be like 17%, 27%, 20%, just because that makes more sense to most people. If you tell them, hey, 17% of the numbers fell in this range, that makes more sense than saying, hey, 0.17 fell in this range. That's relative frequency. Then cumulative frequency, easiest one of all of them, but the one that gives people the most trouble. All you do to find cumulative frequency, all it is, you're looking at your frequency distribution and you're saying, how many of the people that we surveyed or whatever fall from this down? And I know I'm going up, but it's down as far as our numbers go. Well, at this point, total of 5. If I go down to here and I wanna make my cutoff right here, now I got 8 people here, 5 people here, so that's a total of 13. If I wanna go all the way down to here, I got 5 here, 8 here, 6 here, so now I'm at a total of 19. That's your cumulative frequency. Cumulative just means you're adding them up. So as you're going down, you're just adding up, all right, this many people fall from 226 and down. That's all cumulative means. And when we get all the way down here to the bottom, what should our last number be for our set?
30.
Should be 30, because that's how many we had total. So we have something that looks like that. We got the midpoints, relative frequency, cumulative frequency. The one that they didn't put in here, of course, they don't have the tally. Also, they didn't put in the class boundaries that we're gonna talk about. That could be in there. A histogram. This is where we left off. Histogram is a bar graph, and that's wrong. It's a graph, it shouldn't be a bar graph. And I know I said this last time, but I'll say it again. A bar graph, the bars should not touch. A histogram, the bars have to touch. So if you're dealing with a bar graph, the bars shouldn't touch. If you're dealing with a bar graph, the bars shouldn't touch. If you're dealing with a histogram, the bars do touch. So the reason for that is you're going across the bottom here, it should be continuous. You should be going 1, 2, 3, 4, then you're not skipping and going on. We didn't do 4.5, 5, 6, and it's continuous. With the bar graph, it's more something like freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, where the two bars shouldn't touch, because if somebody's a freshman and there's not that person that's right in the middle between a freshman and a sophomore. Now, I know Phoenix, sometimes your grades put you there, but we're not gonna talk about that. Because that annoys me that we have a whole lot of people who are probably right here that should still be right here, but we don't wanna hurt their egos. And that bothers me. I hurt their egos. Maybe that'll put a foot in there behind them and get them to do what they should do. The horizontal scale, going across, is always your numbers that will be your classes, and they'll probably be your class midpoints. The vertical scale is always your frequency, how many times that certain thing that occurs. Bars must touch. Now, you could have a graph that looks like this. So if I have this is my histogram here. I could have another bar maybe right here. What's that telling you about this section that I sort of can point at there? What was the frequency for that section? 0. So sometimes there won't be a bar there and the bars won't touch because there was nothing in that previous section. But that's still a histogram. Class boundaries. To get the class boundaries, main thing here again, this is what I'd write. Find the class boundaries. All you do, subtract a half from the lower end, add a half to the high. It's that simple. And all we're doing there is trying to get rid of the gaps so that we cover everything. Right? So that Brendan doesn't say, well, why is 4.2 not on the graph? Well, as long as we cover those gaps, it will be. The distance from the upper limit of the first class to the lower limit of the second class is 1. We don't want it to be that. We want to, when we do the class boundaries, we want it to close up that gap. So if we're doing class boundaries for these, your class boundary for this one, you're going to go down a half here, so it's going to be 58.5. What's your upper boundary gonna be? On the next one, what's the lower gonna be? 114.5, and then up to, that's your class boundaries. And you just keep going that way. And that covers everything. Oops. Yeah, that just shows. Now, the bad thing with doing class boundaries, if we come up with something that's 114.5, which class does it go into, the first one or the second?
Second one.
Who knows? It's not supposed to come out that way. Our numbers are usually gonna be whole numbers, because usually we're talking about surveying people or something of that nature, and so it's gonna fall in. We're just doing it so that on the graph, the bars touch and we cover everything. Constructing a frequency histogram for the GPS stuff that we were talking about. So if we were gonna draw a histogram for this, what we're gonna look at again, class midpoints. When we draw our graph, our frequency is gonna go up the side over here, how often it happens. So we got like 5, 8, 6, 5, 2, 1, 3. So we probably need to go from like 0 up to 8. And I'd probably go a little farther than 8, maybe go up to 10. Oh yes, it's laying back around there. Yes, thank you. So you might do something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's wrong. Keep confusing me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I wouldn't number everything. I usually do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I could count, just put a few numbers on there. And then across the bottom, you're supposed to, and I probably won't throw a big fit if you don't, you're supposed to put this little Z thing here. Does anybody know what that means?
You're starting on a zero.
You're not starting at 0. So put that little Z thing there so that you know you're not starting at 0, and then you're just going to use the class midpoints, 86.5. And on 86.5, the frequency was 5. So we're going to take our bar and go up to 5 on it. Then the next one, we put our next midpoint, 142.5. I know you can't hardly read this, but, and then it was 8, so we're going to take our bar and go up to 8. And you're just going to keep doing that all the way across for all these. And that's what it looked like when we get done. What does this histogram tell us? And when we start talking about cumulative frequency, where do most of these fall at? Under $200, maybe if we cut this off right here, that's about $200, right? 198.5, somewhere around there. Most of the GPS prices are $200 or less. So if we go out to buy a GPS and it's $600, what do we know?
We're gonna be ripped off.
Yeah, probably a little more than you probably want to spend. And again, this is telling you that you're not starting at 0, going all the way across there. If we were using the class boundaries, I do not suggest this. Notice you got to put more numbers on there. We don't want to do that. Don't use the class boundaries. Use the midpoints. It's so much easier. Frequency polygon. This we didn't have last time. Sorry, I went too far. A frequency polygon, just another kind of graph. This is probably the one that we'll use the least. make a frequency polygon. Again, we're gonna use the midpoints on the horizontal axes here. And all you're gonna do is, you're going to put a dot. It's like the histogram, but instead of putting a bar, you're gonna put a dot at where it's at. So for our first midpoint, it was at 5, we put a dot there. Second one, it was at 8, so, I know mine will probably be off here because I can't really see. We put a dot there, and you just keep going that way. Now, with it, for it to be a polygon, it's gotta be enclosed. I taught you that in geometry, correct? To be a polygon, it's gotta be enclosed. So, what we have to do is we have to go back down here to 0. How many of the GPSs had a 0 price tag on them? None, so we just put a dot right there. Then when we connect them, wherever the other dots are, and maybe we come out here, and this one here, there wasn't any priced at $600, so that's 0, and we have something like that. It's an ugly polygon, it's not a, you know, a regular hexagon or a regular octagon or any of that stuff. It's just an ugly polygon, but it shows us how the prices, what the trend is for the prices. So that's a frequency polygon. And we don't do them a whole lot, but you do need to be able to figure out, like, if that dot's right there, how many were at that certain price. Just be able to read what it tells you. So on this one, see how well I drew it, that has it, yeah. That's what it should have looked like. Mine didn't really look like that. So frequency polygon. Notice, they didn't even go down to 0, they went down to 30.5. How many of them had a price at $30.50? 0, so it doesn't matter. Go down to something. What they do on theirs is they went down this way, one class width lower than what we actually had. And on the other side, they went one class width above, because there was 0 for that also. A relative frequency histogram. Relative frequency histogram has the same shape and the same horizontal scale as the regular histogram. So it looks like the regular histogram, but the vertical scale has relative frequency on it. So this over here, instead of just being frequency, this is probably going to be your percents. So you're doing the same thing, but instead of putting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're putting the percentages on the side. 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, so on and so on. So that makes it a relative frequency. So it's just like the other histogram, except percentage. But if I flip this, I bet there is more, but there might be more than that. Okay. Need to study my PowerPoints better, so I know what's going on.
Probably.
Can't tell anybody. So same as a histogram, along the bottom you probably got your midpoints. Just along the side, instead of numbers, you got percentages. Probably, this is probably more useful than the one with numbers on it. Because again, if I tell Ben, hey, 6 of them were this cost, Ben, he's gonna go, oh really? It's not gonna mean a whole lot to him. If I tell him, hey Ben, 22% are this price, that means a little more to him. You know, all right, so a little more than 20% of them cost this. This is just an example of our GPS again. Again, they put decimals. I'd rather see in percentages. It just makes more sense to most people. So it looks something like that. Notice over there on the side again. Instead of this being 0.05, if we make it 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, so on and so on. And we can look at it and say, okay, the ones that are $114 or less, there's about a little more than 15% of those. Cumulative frequency. Phoenix, how do we say it?
Okay.
OGI? I think we changed it. I don't think that's how we said it last time. Is that right?
I can run.
You said OGI last time? An OGI, a cumulative frequency graph, an OGI. Remember, cumulative frequency means how many of the items are from that number and lower. So still down here, you're going to have your midpoints. That's still going to be the same. Over here on the side, it's going to be frequency. But, do I just need to go up to 10 now? What did all of my numbers go up to? 1 minute. What did, yeah. What did my numbers go up to? How many total numbers did I have? 30. So now I need this to go up to 30. Am I probably going to make 30 marks?
No.
Probably not. Probably what I do,
Make 10.
maybe go by 5s or 10s. Don't be quite so lazy as Phoenix. Yeah. Let's go by 30s. Let's put one over that. Sort of.
Go by 15s.
Go by 15s. So 15, 30, close enough. Yeah. Probably 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. That's pretty good. You only gotta draw 6.
A little
It's
much.
not a whole lot. That's a little too much, Phoenix. All right, remember that on the test. The upper boundaries are marked on the horizontal axes. You're just going to cumulative. Oh, that's probably, I should probably say that. Let's go back. Yeah, this, I said put midpoints down here. Probably not. You want the upper boundaries. You want your upper. That was sort of stupid of me. Because we're not stopping at 110. We're actually going up to 114.5. So we'll put the upper boundaries on here. So that we can say, okay, from here down, there is this many. And when we get done, where should we end up at? On this one, we should end up at 30, the very top. That should be the very last thing. Because all 30 of them are at that price or lower. Yeah, it's constructed. It's not that difficult. You can just use this stuff. We'll skip over this a little bit. Not that hard to make. So we have this, and notice we did the class boundaries this time because we want these. We don't want the midpoints. That is my fault. I screwed up. We don't want the midpoints. We want the highest number that each one could be. So we know that 5 of the GPS systems are at 114 or lower. 13 are at 170.5 or lower, so on, so on, so on. And our OGI, is that what you said? Then our OGI would look something like this. So at 114 or less, we know that we had 5 of them. Here, we had, about 13. And that's what you gotta be able to do, you gotta be able to read these. What's it look like this one is? 18, 19, somewhere around there. So be able to tell that. And if we're looking at this and it says, all right, how many of the GPS systems were at $282.50 or less, and you go up here and you're looking over here and you say 24 and somebody else says 23, I'm probably gonna accept either answer. If you put 26, I'm probably gonna mark that wrong because 26 would be above that line. So, you know, if you're within a little bit there, there'll be a little leadway there reading some of these. Probably doing the wrong ones. Probably the wrong ones.
If he's gonna come up here, he's gonna do this, we're gonna be like, okay, Sean, you're gonna show me my kids. Shut up. You'll be kids. Show me your joke. Is it really good? It's one of the motherfuckers said. You won't hear that.
You didn't get Sean his vape thing, did you? 'Cause you thought you had to get
Yeah, I was like.
No, you keep looking.
I ain't scared if I got one on there for my vape. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I saw. I think you know.
I wanna get it.
I know. Well, like, so
No.
Who plays your position?
Who plays my position? I'd give it to BT. Logan.
That's okay.
I thought BT does. No. Bryce don't play N. He does.
Nah, you give the big bird. You're attacking.
Bro, I played both last week.
Wait, so why are you playing D-tackle?
Good on pass. Good on aggressive, so if I'm there.
It starts on.
I'm not rushing exactly, bro.
I'm
I'm not a bad D tackle.
I can't do that. I wish I could be on the end. End is like a dream.
Who did you say BT is?
I like Bryce Thompson. Bryce Thompson.
Linebackers for sure.
Slide, I don't remember.
Nobody like it. Don't like this. I like the smile. You with Terrence?
He's definitely got a.
Yeah, he's.
Oh, you're gonna talk on TV? What is it?
You're gonna talk on TV. You're gonna be like, so how the team looking? Oh, we're looking good. Look like we're going to stay this year.
Yeah, I think we're going deep in the playoffs this year.
Hey, shout me out.
Shout out my boy Gage like a dog.
Instagram.
Dog. So we don't all have to sign that even though we're all gonna be on TV?
Sean's gonna be like, chicks, hit us up.
You say you're sweating?
Instagrams.
What is this?
All right, we're gonna do these together here just to show you. What I might do, 2 copies, or 2 pages. Start with the one that says number 1 first. Might turn the other one over so that we can do the work on the back of it. Does that make sense? So have it laying like this, and then you put number 1, then you can have it in your notes there so you know how to do it. On problem 1. Looks like the numbers, are they in order? No. Let's go through and let's put them in order. Somebody help me out so I don't have to keep looking back here. What's the lowest?
2.
I think there's 2
2 2s? You can mark them off on your paper as we go.
Well, what's this 2 down here? Yeah, because it's not in the same font.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be this.
It's not?
No.
So just one.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the computer when I was numbering 1 and 2 and 3. When I hit enter, it put a 2 there and I didn't go back and delete it. There's there's only 1, 2.
1, 2. But two sets.
Two sevens. And 2 8s.
7. 12.
11.
11.
And
11 was removed right next to 12. I don't know. 13.
15.
16. 17. 38.
There's an 18.
Yes. 19.
2 19. 20. 2 20.
2 21s.
24. 25.
Did we miss something? No?
20.
All right.
2 28s.
2 20.
29.
32. 35. 38. 40.
Any more? Count up your numbers. How many you guys got? 27, alright, looks like we got them all. Alright, figure out the classes. We want the highest and the lowest, what's the highest?
41.
So, I'm gonna write this down this time, I probably won't write it down every time. Class width, that's what we're figuring out. So, to find the class width, we do 41 minus, what's the lowest?
2.
And we're gonna divide by how many classes? I think we gotta read the directions. 6.
6 classes.
That's what it says up here in the directions, right? So 6 classes, so we're gonna divide by 6. 42, or 41 minus 1 is, or 41 minus 2 is what?
33.
Divide by 6,
Well, 6.5.
so 6.5, and we're gonna round that up to 7. So that's our class width. And that's probably the most important thing as you're doing this, so you don't mess up. Now on your chart, we got our classes here. You're always gonna start off with the lowest one. What's our lowest number?
2.
And then all you're gonna do to find all your lower class limits is add your class width. So what comes next?
9.
Then what?
16, 23, 30, 37.
How many do we wanna go out?
6.
6 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got all 6 of them. All right. How are we gonna find the upper class limits on each one?
Subtract
So what we get here?
8.
Here? Next one?
And 44.
And then on this last one, take that number and add the class width. So what is it?
43.
43. Sorry, mine's sort of ugly. I didn't want sideways. The bar went down. The tally. Do we really need the tally this time? Since we put them out in order, we really don't need the tally. So I'm gonna skip that and I'm just gonna do frequency next. Is that all right? 2 to 8.
5. There's 5.
5 of them, those 5 right there. So I'm just put 5 there. I'm gonna draw this across here so we can keep them separate.
2 for 2 with
2 for the next one.
Wait, no.
4 for the next one. 16 to 22.
8.
23 to 29. How many? 6. 30 to 36. 37 to 43. Now, what I, again, suggest down here, and I should say it on there, yeah. Got your frequency, you're gonna add all these up. I add all those up for us. 27. And all that does, just checks to make sure that we didn't miss anything.
Well, because there's 27 of this classes.
27 because of that, right? That's how many we have. Midpoint. How are we gonna find the midpoint of each class?
You add the lower by the higher, divide by 2.
Add these two, divide by 2. 2 plus 8 is 10, divide by 2, 5. It's always gonna be the same as the frequency, right?
Stop doing that, all right? I struggle enough. They're gonna hear that on the video and not listen after that and be like, yep.
9 plus 15 is what?
24.
24 divided by 2.
12.
16 plus 22.
14. No. I said 12.
Jack, you might get out of the
38.
way enough, Ben. You guys can see.
16.
16 plus 22 is 38 divided by 2.
Wait, no.
19.
19. Now we're starting to struggle, so since, just to show you there that we're starting to struggle, you guys not coming in quite as quick with your answers. What should happen is we go, how much should we go up each time?
7.
The same as our class width. So 19 plus 7 is what?
26.
26 plus 7 is,
33.
that's gonna be the midpoint there. 33 plus 7 is
40.
next one, class boundaries. Should probably made this bigger,
1.5.
because it's gonna run out of space.
8.5.
To find the class boundaries, you just go down a half, up a half. So 1.5, Phoenix said, up to 8.5. Can you guys fill these in while I fill them in, and we don't have to say them all? Yours looks something like that. Relative frequency. Remember relative frequency, what should you remember when you're thinking of relative frequency? Percentage. To find the relative frequency, and I'm gonna do one of these, and I'm not gonna write the rest of them down, showing the math or anything. The first one, what was the frequency in this class? 5. How many total did we have? That's
There's
it.
27. Yeah.
Somebody help me out, what's 5 divided by 27?
Point 18.5.
Point
So
18.
19.19.
So let's, if it comes out 5, let's go 18 and a half. Or 0.185, is that what it came out?
Yeah, 0.185.
Alright, so let's not round it off, because if we do, that's gonna mess up everything else, right? So let's go, and we're gonna change it to a percent, so we bump it 2 places, so 18.5%. So if it comes out exactly 0.5, let's leave it at 0.5, otherwise that's gonna mess up our numbers. If it comes out higher than 5, we'll round it up. If it comes up lower than 5, we'll round it, or leave it the same as what it is. What's 4 divided by 27?
0.148.
Point what?
0.148.
148, so about 15%. What's 8 divided by 27? What is it? 296, so about 30%. Now, hold on. This one was 15%.
Teachers, pardon the interruption.
Everybody see
Will
that?
all Hope Squad members please be released to come to the middle school gym for training? And if members with a B lunch need to eat, they may come join directly after lunch. Again, all Hope Squad members, please go to the middle school gym for training. Again, if you have B lunch, please eat before you go and you can join directly after that. Thank you.
You guys are stupid that we have to repeat everything twice like that.
So,
You want to go before you go.
Maybe
Don't
a
go
little
yet.
bit.
6,
Don't go yet. Go
and
after.
so 22%.
Yeah.
It's 2, what's 2 out divided by 27?
He did.
Wait, did you not just listen to what they said?
074.
I'm not a coach. though.
074, so about 7%. 2 again, same thing, right? 7%. Now, as we do this, and it's probably not gonna work out very well, what should be true about all these percentages?
Should I do it?
They should add up to 100. Somebody add all those up for us real quick.
99.5.
99.5. Does anybody remember what we said last time?
Yep, we took away somewhere.
We went in 102 and 98, that's probably pretty good. So we're pretty close. One other one I wanna add to this. Cumulative frequency. So let's make another little box out there on the side for yourself. Cumulative frequency is not hard, and that's why I'm adding it. From 8 down, how many are in our group? 5.
9.
From 15 down, how many are in the group?
17. Oh, okay.
Nine.
5, 9. I looked the wrong.
I looked at the wrong thing too. From here down, how many? 17. From here down, how many? 23. Remember, all you're doing is each time you're adding on this next number. From there down, 25 and 27. Remember that last one should be how many numbers were in our set. Think you can handle all that?
Is our homework, is homework?
No. Pretty easy. Again, the hardest part,
It's sorting them.
making sure you get this. Let's do another one real quick. The sorting, you're right, that was hard. Do we have to sort it?
No.
No. And I probably shouldn't have. So let's do number 2. Somebody help me out on number 2. Let's find what's the highest number?
95.
95? What's the lowest? 53? Everybody agree with those?
52.
52? Is that correct? How many classes did we say?
6.
6 again? 95 minus 52 divided by 6.
7.16.
So we're gonna round that up to 8. So that's our class width is 8. What's our lowest number? We're gonna start here at 52. We go up by 8 each time. What's the next one gonna be? 60, then what? Then what?
76.
Then what?
84.
84, then what? 92. This time I'm gonna put the tally in here. Because now, let's just go across the list. No, I'm sorry, we need the upper limits, don't we, my fault. What goes here? Now let's go to our list. Somebody read off the list to me and I'm just gonna tally them up as we go. What's the first number?
53, 75, 56, 82,
We're gonna do this a lot throughout the year, so.
58,
What was it?
58, 69,
Yes. Sorta, not really, but what? That's fine. Does anybody remember where we were at?
60,
60?
94, 65, 66, 67, the same difference.
Yeah.
69, 81, 76, 82, 90, 75, 86, 59, 55, 76, 73, 52, 94, 91, 83, 67, 88, 95, and 76.
That's probably quicker than sorting them out, isn't it? As long as you don't get distracted. Frequency, how many in this first one?
Six.
Next one?
4, 5, 7, 4, 3.
Those should all total up, how many total numbers did we have? How many? I got 29 on my stuff. 29. Hang on. That one's the stuff. For what? Supposed to be at that. You want to sit over here and be quiet for a couple minutes till this goes through? If I get in trouble for this, you don't get in trouble. Class midpoint. 55.5, is that what you said? Then, if you can add 8 to each one, it's gonna make it easier. 63.5, 71.5, 79.5, 87.5. Can you do it that fast, Brandon? 95.5. It's like I'm a mathematical genius, isn't it? Just add the answer. You don't have to add the cumulative frequency on each one for the rest of them, but know how to do it, because I think it's on the quiz next time. You messed them up, didn't you? That's true. I'm gonna do with you. But Sean ain't got marked out spots on his paper.
Yeah, it shows the top 5%.
Gage has stuff like that on his paper.
Every single paper I got.
Yeah, Gage, I don't got any of them.
Look, he's trying to show you. Get done with that one, don't lose the other two, we're gonna stop. This is the actual assignment. hang on to that worksheet though, because we'll probably do the other two at the start of class next time, maybe before the quiz over this stuff.